This is Daniel and Revelation by Uriah Smith. Chapter 13, Persecuting Powers. Verse 1. And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. 2. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power, and his seat, and great authority. 3. And I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast. 4. And they worshipped the dragon which gave power unto the beast, and they worshipped the beast, saying, Who is like unto the beast? Who is able to make war with him? 5. And there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and power was given unto him to continue 42 months. 6. And he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name, and his tabernacle, and them that dwell in heaven. 7. And it was given unto him to make war with the saints, and to overcome them, and power was given him over all kindreds, and tongues, and nations. 8. And all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose names are not written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. 9. If any man have an ear, let him hear. 10. He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints. The sea is a symbol of peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues. Revelation 17:15. A beast is the Bible symbol of an unrighteous nation, or power, representing sometimes the civil power alone, sometimes the ecclesiastical in connection with the civil. Whenever a beast is seen to come up out of the sea, it denotes that the power arises in a thickly populated territory, and if the winds are represented as blowing upon the sea, as in Daniel 7:2-3, political commotion, civil strife, and revolution are indicated. By the dragon of the previous chapter, and the beast first introduced in this, we have the Roman power as a whole brought to view in its 2 phases, pagan and papal. Hence, these 2 symbols have each the 7 heads and 10 horns. See on chapter 17:10. The 7-headed and 10-horned beast, or more briefly, the leopard beast, here introduced, symbolizes a power which exercises ecclesiastical as well as civil authority. This point is of sufficient importance to justify the introduction of a few of the conclusive arguments which go to prove it. A change of symbols. The line of prophecy in which this symbol occurs commences with chapter 12. The symbols of earthly governments embraced in the prophecy are the dragon of chapter 12 and the leopard beast and 2-horned beast of chapter 13. The same line of prophecy evidently continues into chapter 14, closing with verse 5 of that chapter. Commencing, therefore, with verse 1 of chapter 12 and ending with verse 5 of chapter 14, we have a line of prophecy distinct and complete in itself. Each of the powers here introduced is represented as fiercely persecuting the church of God. The scene opens with the church under the symbol of a woman, anxiously longing for the promise to be fulfilled that the seed of the woman, the Lord of glory, should appear among men. The dragon stood before the woman for the purpose of devouring her child. His evil design is thwarted, and the child is caught up to God and his throne. A period follows in which the church suffers severe oppression from this dragon power. And though in this part of the scene, the prophet occasionally glances forward, once even down almost to the end, because all the enemies of the church were to be actuated by the spirit of the dragon, yet in verse 1 of chapter 13 we are carried back to the time when the leopard beast, the successor of the dragon, commences his career. From this power, for the long period of 1,260 years, the church suffers war and persecution. Following this period of oppression, the church has another conflict, brief but sharp and severe, with the two-horned beast. Then comes deliverance, and the prophecy closes with the church brought safely through all her persecutions and standing victorious with the Lamb on Mount Zion. Thank God for the sure promise of final victory. The one character which ever appears the same in all these scenes, and whose history is the leading theme through all the prophecy, is the Church of God. The other characters are her persecutors, and are introduced simply because they are such. And here, as an introductory inquiry, we raise the question, who or what is it that persecutes the true church? It is a false or apostate church. What is it that is ever warring against true religion? It is a false and counterfeit religion. Who ever heard of the civil power merely of any nation persecuting the people of God? Governments may war against other governments to avenge some wrong, real or imaginary, or to acquire territory and extend their power, as nations have often warred against the Jews. But governments do not persecute, mark the word, do not persecute, people on account of their religion, unless under the control of some opposite and hostile system of religion. But the powers introduced in this prophecy, the dragon, the leopard beast, and the two-horned beast, are all persecuting powers. They are actuated by rage and enmity against the people and the Church of God. And this fact is of itself sufficiently conclusive evidence that in each of these powers, the ecclesiastical or religious element is the controlling power. Take the dragon. What does it symbolize? The Roman Empire is the undeniable answer. But this is not enough. No one would be satisfied with this answer and no more. It must be more definite. We then add the Roman Empire in its pagan form, to which all must also agree. But just as soon as we say pagan, we introduce a religious element, for paganism is one of the hugest systems of counterfeit religion that Satan ever devised. The dragon, then, is so far an ecclesiastical power that the very characteristic by which it is distinguished is a false system of religion. And what made the dragon persecute the Church of Christ? It was because Christianity was prevailing against paganism, sweeping away its superstitions, overturning its idols, and dismantling its temples. The religious element of that power was touched, and persecution was the result. We now come to the leopard beast of chapter 13. What does that symbolize? The answer still is the Roman Empire. But the dragon symbolized the Roman Empire, and why does not the same symbol represent it still? There has been a change in the religious character of the empire, and this beast symbolizes Rome in its professedly Christian form. And it is this change of religion, and this alone, which makes a change in the symbol necessary. This beast differs from the dragon only in that he presents a different religious aspect. Hence, it would be altogether wrong to affirm that it denotes simply the Roman civil power. To this beast the dragon gives his seat, his power, and great authority. By what power was pagan Rome succeeded? We all know that it was by papal Rome. It matters not to our present purpose when or by what means this change was effected. The great fact is apparent and is acknowledged by all, that the next great phase of the Roman Empire after its pagan form was its papal. It would not be correct, therefore, to say that pagan Rome gave its seat and power to a form of government merely civil, having no religious element whatever. No stretch of the imagination can conceive of such a transaction. But two phases of empire are here recognized, and in the prophecy, Rome is pagan until Rome is papal. The statement that the dragon gave to the leopard beast his seat and power is further evidence that the dragon of Revelation 2:3 is not a symbol of Satan personally, for Satan has not abdicated in favor of any other malevolent being, and he has not given up his seat to any earthly power. The papacy. But it may be said that it takes the leopard beast and two horned beasts together to constitute the papacy, and hence it is to these that the dragon gives his power, seat, and great authority. But the prophecy does not say so. It is the leopard beast alone with which the dragon has to do. It is to that beast alone that he gives his power, seat, and great authority. It is that beast that has a head that is wounded to death, which is afterward healed. That beast that the whole world wonders after. That beast that receives a mouth speaking blasphemies, and that wears out the saints for 1,260 years. And all this before the succeeding power, the two-horned beast, comes upon the stage of action at all. The leopard beast alone, therefore, symbolizes the Roman Empire in its papal form, the controlling influence being ecclesiastical. Comparison with the little horn of Daniel 7. To show this more fully, we have but to draw a parallel between the little horn of Daniel 7, 8, 20, 24, and 25, and this power. From this comparison, it will appear that the little horn referred to and the leopard beast symbolize the same power, but the little horn is acknowledged on all hands to be a symbol of the papacy. There are 6 points of identity, as follows. 1. The little horn was a blasphemous power. He shall speak great words against the Most High. Daniel 7:25. The leopard beast of Revelation 13:6 does the same. He opened his mouth in blasphemy against God. 2. The little horn made war with the saints and prevailed against them. Daniel 7:21. This beast also, Revelation 13:7, makes war with the saints and overcomes them. 3. The little horn had a mouth speaking great things. Daniel 7:8 and 20. And of this beast we read, Revelation 13:5, and there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies. 4. The little horn arose on the cessation of the pagan form of the Roman Empire. The beast of Revelation 13. 2 arises at the same time, for the dragon, pagan Rome, gives him his power, his seat, and great authority. 5. Power was given to the little horn to continue for a time, times, and the dividing of time, or 1,260 years. Daniel 7:25. To this beast also power was given for 42 months, or 1,260 years. Revelation 13:5, 6. At the end of that specified period, the dominion of the little horn was to be taken away. Daniel 7:26. At the end of the same period, the leopard beast was himself to be led into captivity. Revelation 13:10. Both these specifications were fulfilled in the captivity and exile of the Pope and the temporary overthrow of the papacy by France in 1798. Here are points that prove identity, for when we have in prophecy 2 symbols, as in this instance representing powers that come upon the stage of action at the same time, occupy the same territory, maintain the same character, do the same work, exist the same length of time, and meet the same fate. Those symbols represent the same identical power. Now, all the particulars above specified do apply alike to the little horn and the leopard beast of chapter 13, showing that these 2 symbols represent the same power. It is admitted on all hands that the little horn represents the papacy. And he who claims that this leopard beast does not represent the same must, to be consistent, show that at the same time that the papacy arose, there arose another great power exactly like it, occupying the same territory, bearing the same character, doing the same work, continuing the same length of time, and meeting the same fate, and yet a separate and distinct power, which would be as absurd as it would be impossible. The deadly wound, how it was healed. The head that was wounded to death was the papal head, We are held to this conclusion by the very obvious principle that whatever is spoken in prophecy of the symbol of any government applies to that government only while it is represented by that symbol. Now Rome is represented by two symbols, the dragon and the leopard beast, because it has presented two phases, the pagan and the papal. And whatever is said of the dragon applies to Rome only in its pagan form, and whatever is said of the leopard beast applies to Rome only in its professedly Christian form. But Rome was pagan in John's day, who lived under the sixth or imperial head. This shows us at once that 6 of the heads, including the imperial, belong to the dragon, and if it was any one of these heads which was wounded to death, then it was one of the heads of the dragon, or one of the forms of government that belonged to Rome in its pagan form, and not one of the heads of the beast. And John should have said, "I saw one of the heads of the dragon wounded to death," but he says that it was one of the heads of the beast that was wounded to death. In other words, this wound fell upon some form of government that existed in the Roman Empire after its change from paganism to Christianity. But after this change, there was but one head, and that was the papal one. Thus, it is placed beyond controversy that it was none other than the papal head that was wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed. This wounding is the same as the going into captivity. Revelation 13:10. It was inflicted when the Pope was taken prisoner by Berthier, the French general, and the papal government was for a time abolished in 1798. Stripped of his power, both civil and ecclesiastical, the captive Pope, Pius VI, died in exile at Valence in France, August 29, 1799. But the deadly wound was healed when the papacy was re-established, though with a diminution of its former power, by the election of a new pope, March 14, 1800. See Bauer's History of the Popes, pages 404 through 428, Crowley on the Apocalypse, London edition, page 251. This beast opens his mouth in blasphemy against God to blaspheme his name. See mention under Daniel 7:25 of the presumptuous titles assumed by the popes. He blasphemes the tabernacle in heaven by turning the attention of his subjects to his own throne and palace instead of to the tabernacle of God. By turning their attention away from the city of God, Jerusalem above, and pointing them to Rome as the eternal city. And he blasphemes them that dwell in heaven by assuming to exercise the power of forgiving sins, and so turning away the minds of men form the mediatorial work of Christ and his heavenly assistance in the sanctuary above. By verse 10 we are again referred to the events of 1798, when that power that had for 1,260 years led the saints of God into captivity was led itself, as already noticed. Verse 11, "And I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon." 12, "And he exerciseth all the power of the first beast before him, and causeth the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed." 13, "And he doeth great wonders, so that he maketh fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men." 14, "And deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth, that they should make an image to the beast, which had the wound by the sword, and did live." 15, "And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak, and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed." 16, "And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand, or in their foreheads." 17, "And that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark or the name of the beast, or the number of his name." Another beast. These verses bring to view the third great symbol in the line of prophecy we are examining, usually denominated the 2-horned beast. We inquire for its application. the dragon, pagan Rome, and the leopard beast, papal Rome, present before us great organizations standing as the representatives of two great systems of false religion. Analogy would seem to require that the remaining symbol, the two-horned beast, have a similar application and find its fulfillment in some nationality which is the representative of still another great system of religion. But the only remaining system which is exercising a controlling influence in the world today is Protestantism. Abstractly considered, paganism embraces all heathen lands, containing more than half the population of the globe. Catholicism, which may perhaps be considered as embracing the religion of the Greek Church, so nearly identical with it, belongs to nations which compose a great portion of Christendom. Mohammedanism is an effete system, which has ceased to be any important factor in the world's progress. Moreover, it seems to have received enough prophetic attention in Daniel 11 and Revelation 9. But Protestantism is the religion of nations which constitute the vanguard of the world in liberty, enlightenment, progress, and power. The United States in prophecy. If then Protestantism is the religion to which we are to look, to what nationality as the representative of that religion does the prophecy have application? There are notable Protestant nations in Europe, but for reasons which will hereafter appear, the symbol cannot apply to any of these. A careful investigation has led to the conclusion that it does apply to Protestant America or the government of the United States. We trust the reader will now feel impatient for some of the reasons for such an application and will carefully consider the evidence by which it is supported. Character of its government. 1. Probabilities considered. Are there any reasons why we should expect that our own government would be mentioned in prophecy? On what conditions have other nations found a place in the prophetic record? First, if they have acted any prominent part in the world's history. And secondly, and above all, if they have had jurisdiction over or maintained any relations with the people of God. In the records of the Bible and of secular history, we find data from which to deduce this rule respecting the prophetic mention of earthly governments, namely, whenever the relations of God's people to any nation are such that a true history of the former, which is the object of all revelation, could not be given without a notice of the latter, such nation is mentioned in prophecy. And all these conditions are certainly fulfilled in our government. No nation has ever attracted more attention, excited more profound wonder, or given promise of greater eminence or influence. And certainly here, if anywhere on the globe, are to be found a strong array of Christians, such as are the salt of the earth and the light of the world, whose history could not be written without mention of that government under which they live and enjoy their liberty. And the conviction has fastened itself upon many minds that the hand of Providence had been conspicuously manifest in the rise and progress of this nation. Governor Pownall, an English statesman in 1780, while our revolution was in progress, predicted that this country would become independent and that a civilizing activity, beyond what Europe could ever know, would animate it, and that its commercial and naval power would be found in every quarter of the globe. He then speaks of the probable establishment of this country as a free and sovereign power as a revolution that has stronger marks of divine interposition superseding the ordinary course of human affairs than any other event which this world has experienced. De Tocqueville, a French writer speaking of the separation of the United States from England, says, "It might seem their folly, but was really their fate, or rather, the providence of God, who has doubtless a work for them to do in which the massive materiality of the English character would have been too ponderous a dead weight upon their progress." George Alfred Townsend, speaking of the misfortunes that have attended the other governments on this continent, New World and Old, p. 635, says, "The history of the United States was separated by a beneficent providence far from the wild and cruel history of the rest of the continent. Such considerations as these are calculated to arouse in every mind a strong expectation that this government will be found to have some part to act in the carrying out of God's providential purposes in this world, and that somewhere it will be spoken of in the prophetic word. 2. The chronology of this power. At what period in this world's history is the rise of this power placed in the prophecy? On this point, the foundation for the conclusions at which we must arrive is already laid in the facts elicited in reference to the preceding or leopard beast. It was at the time when this beast went into captivity or was killed, politically, with the sword, verse 10, or, which we suppose to be the same thing, had one of its heads wounded to death, verse 3, that John saw the two-horned beast coming up. If the leopard beast, as we have conclusively proved, signifies the papacy, and the going into captivity met its fulfillment in the temporary overthrow of the Popadom by the French in 1798, then we have the time definitely specified when we are to look for the rise of this power. The expression "coming up" must signify that the power to which it applies was but newly organized, and was then just rising into prominence and influence. The power represented by this symbol must, then, be some power which in 1798 stood in this position before the world. And in what condition stood the United States of America at that time? Macmillan and Company, the London publishers, in announcing their Statesman's Yearbook for 1867, make an interesting statement of the changes that took place among the leading nations of the world during the half-century between the years 1817 and 1867. They say, "The half-century has extinguished 3 kingdoms, 1 grand duchy, 8 duchies, 4 principalities, 1 electorate, and 4 republics. 3 new kingdoms have arisen, and 1 kingdom has been transformed into an empire. There are now 41 states in Europe against 59 which existed in 1817. Not less remarkable is the territorial extension of the superior states of the world. Russia has annexed 567,364 square miles. The United States, 1,968,009. France, 4,620. Prussia, 29,781. Sardinia, expanding into Italy, has increased by 83,41. The Indian Empire has been augmented by 431,616. The principal states that have lost territory are Turkey, Mexico, Austria, Denmark, and the Netherlands. In their bearing upon the prophecy before us, these statements are worthy of the particular attention of the reader. During the half-century named, 21 governments disappeared altogether, and only 3 new ones arose. 5 lost in territory instead of gaining. Only 5 besides the United States added to their domain, and the one which did the most in this direction added only a little over 500,000 of square miles, while the United States added nearly 2 million square miles. Thus, the American government added over 1,400,000 square miles of territory during the 50 years named, more than any other single nation, and over 800,000 more than were added during that time by all the other nations of the earth put together. Can anyone doubt what nation was emphatically coming up during the period covered by these statistics? Certainly, it must be admitted that the United States is the only power that meets the specifications of the prophecy on this point of chronology. Mr. Wesley, in his notes on Revelation 14, written in 1754, says of the two-horned beast, "He has not yet come, though he cannot be far off, for he is to appear at the end of the 42 months of the first beast." 3. Age of this power. There is good evidence to show that the government symbolized by the two-horned beast is introduced into prophecy in the early part of its career, that it is, when first brought to view, a youthful power. John's words are, And I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb. Why does not John simply say, he had 2 horns? Why does he add, like a lamb? It must be for the purpose of denoting the character of this beast, showing that it is not only of a very innocent and harmless demeanor ostensibly, but also that it is a very youthful power, for the horns of a lamb are horns that have but just begun to grow. Bear in mind that by the preceding argument on chronology, our gaze is fixed to the year 1798, and the power symbolized was then a youthful power, according to the present argument. Question: what notable power was at that time coming into prominence but still in its youth? England was not, nor was France, nor Russia, nor any European power. For a young and rising power at that epoch, we are obliged to turn our eyes to the New World. But as soon as we return them to this continent, they rest inevitably upon this country as the power in question. No other power this side of the ocean is entitled to any mention in comparison with it. 4. Location of the 2-horned beast. A single declaration of the prophecy is sufficient to guide us to important and correct conclusions on this point. John calls it another beast. It is a symbol in addition to and different from the papal beast which the prophet had just had under consideration. That is, it symbolizes a power separate and distinct from that which is denoted by the preceding beast. This which John calls another beast is certainly no part of the first beast, and the power symbolized by it is likewise no part of that which is intended by that beast. This is fatal to the claim of those who, to avoid the application of this symbol to our own government, say that it denotes some phase of the papacy, for in that case it would be a part of the preceding or leopard beast. If this is another beast, it must be found in some locality not covered by any other symbols. Let us, then, take a brief survey of those symbols found in the Word of God, which represent earthly governments. These are found chiefly, if not entirely, in the books of Daniel and the Revelation. In Daniel 2, a symbol is introduced in the form of a great image, consisting of 4 parts: gold, silver, brass, and iron, which is finally dashed to atoms, and a great mountain taking its place fills the whole earth. In Daniel 7 we find a lion, a bear, a leopard, and a great and terrible nondescript beast, which, after passing through a new and remarkable phase, goes into the lake of fire. In Daniel 8 we have a ram, a he-goat, and a horn, little at first, but waxing exceeding great. In Revelation 9 we have locusts like unto horses. In Revelation 12 we have a great red dragon. In Revelation 13 we have a blasphemous leopard beast, and a beast with 2 horns like a lamb. In Revelation 17 we have a scarlet-colored beast, upon which a woman sits, holding in her hand a golden cup full of filthiness and abomination. What governments and what powers are represented by all these? Do any of them symbolize the United States? Some of them certainly represent earthly kingdoms, for so the prophecies themselves expressly inform us, and in the application of nearly all of them there is quite a uniform agreement among expositors. The 4 parts of the great image of Daniel 2 represent 4 kingdoms: Babylon, or Chaldea, Medo-Persia, Greece, and Rome. The lion of the 7th chapter also represents Babylon, the bear, Medo-Persia, the leopard, Grecia, and the great and terrible beast, Rome. The horn with human eyes and mouth, which appears in the 2nd phase of this beast, represents the papacy, and covers its history down to the time when it was temporarily overthrown by the French in 1798. In Daniel 8, likewise, the ram represents Medo-Persia, the he-goat, Grecia, and the little horn, Rome. All these have a very clear and definite application to the governments named. None of them thus far can have any reference to the United States. The symbols brought to view in Revelation 9 All are agreed in applying to the Saracens and Turks. The dragon of Revelation 12 is the acknowledged symbol of pagan Rome. The leopard beast of chapter 13 can be shown to be identical with the 11th horn of the fourth beast of Daniel 7, and hence to symbolize the papacy. The scarlet beast and the woman of Revelation 17 as evidently apply also to Rome under pagan and papal rule, the symbols having a special reference to the distinction between the civil power and the ecclesiastical, the one being represented by the beast, the other by the woman seated thereon. There is one symbol left, and that is the two-horned beast of Revelation 13. On this, there is more difference of opinion, and before seeking for an application, let us look at the ground covered by those already examined. Babylon and Medo-Persia covered all the civilized portion of Asia. Greece covered Eastern Europe, including Russia. Rome, with the 10 kingdoms into which it was divided, as represented by the 10 toes of the image, the 10 horns of the fourth beast of Daniel 7, the 10 horns of the dragon of Revelation 12, and the 10 horns of the leopard beast of Revelation 13 covered all Western Europe. See map of the 4 kingdoms, facing page 81. In other words, all the Eastern Hemisphere known to history and civilization is absorbed by the symbols already examined, respecting the application of which there is scarcely any room for doubt. But there is a mighty nation in the Western Hemisphere, worthy, as we have seen, of being mentioned in prophecy, which is not yet brought in, and there is one symbol remaining, the application of which has not yet been made. All the symbols but one are applied, and all the available portions of the Eastern Hemisphere are covered by the applications. Of all the symbols mentioned, one alone, the two-horned beast of Revelation 13, is left, and of all the countries of the earth respecting which any reasons exist why they should be mentioned in prophecy, one alone, the United States government, remains. Do the two-horned beast and the United States belong together? If they do, then all the symbols find an application, and all the ground is covered. If they do not, it follows, first, that the United States is not represented in prophecy, and secondly, that the symbol of the two-horned beast finds no government to which it can apply. But the first of these suppositions is not probable, and the second is not possible. But one conclusion can be drawn from these arguments, and that is that the two-horned beast must be located in the Western Hemisphere, and that it symbolizes the United States. Another consideration pointing to the locality of this power is drawn from the fact that John saw it arising from the earth. If the sea, from which the leopard beast arose, Revelation 13:1, denotes peoples, nations, and multitudes, Revelation 17:15, the earth would suggest, by contrast, a new and previously unoccupied territory. Being thus excluded from eastern continents and impressed with the idea of looking to territory not previously known to civilization, we turn of necessity to the Western Hemisphere. Its wonderful growth. 5. The manner of its rise. The manner in which the two-horned beast was seen coming up shows, equally with its location, age, and chronology, that it is a symbol of the United States. John says he saw the beast coming up out of the earth, and this expression must have been designedly used to point out the contrast between the rise of this beast and that of other national prophetic symbols. The 4 beasts of Daniel 7 and the leopard beast of Revelation 13 all arose out of the sea. New nations generally arise by overflowing other nations and taking their place. But no other nation was overturned in order to make room for the United States, and the struggle for its independence was already 15 years in the past when it came into the field of prophecy. The prophet saw only peace. The word which is used in verse 11 to describe the manner in which this beast comes up is very expressive. It is anabainon, one of the prominent definitions of which is to grow or spring up as a plant. And it is a remarkable fact that this very figure has been chosen by political writers, without any reference to the prophecy, as the one conveying the best idea of the manner in which this government has arisen. Mr. G. A. Townsend, in his work entitled The New World Compared with the Old, page 635, says, "In this web of islands, the West Indies, began the life of both North and South Americas. There Columbus saw land. There Spain began her baneful and brilliant Western Empire. Thence Cortez departed for Mexico, De Soto for the Mississippi, Balboa for the Pacific, and Pizarro for Peru. The history of the United States was separated by a beneficent providence far from this wild and cruel history of the rest of the continent, and like a silent seed we grew into empire, while empire itself, beginning in the South, was swept by so interminable a hurricane that what of its history we can ascertain is read by the very lightnings that devastated it. The growth of English America may be likened to a series of lyrics sung by separate singers, which, coalescing, at last make a vigorous chorus, and this, attracting many from afar, swells and is prolonged, until presently it assumes the dignity and proportions of epic song. A writer in the Dublin Nation, about the year 1850, spoke of the United States as a wonderful empire which was emerging, and amid the silence of the earth daily adding to its power and pride. In Martin's History of the Great Reformation, Volume 4, page 238, is an extract from an oration delivered by Edward Everett on the English exiles who founded this government, in which he says, "Did they look for a retired spot, inoffensive from its obscurity, safe in its remoteness from the haunts of despots, where the little church of Leyden might enjoy freedom of conscience? Behold the mighty regions over which, in peaceful conquest, Victoria sign-clad, they have borne the banners of the cross." Will the reader now look at these expressions side by side, coming up out of the earth, emerging amid the silence of the earth, like a silent seed we grew into empire, mighty regions secured by peaceful conquests. The first is from the prophet stating what would be when the two-horned beast should arise. The others are from political writers, telling what has been in the history of our own government. Can anyone fail to see that the last three are exactly synonymous with the first, and that they record a complete accomplishment of the prediction? Another inquiry naturally follows. Has the United States come up in a manner to meet the specifications of the prophecy? Let us see. A short time before the Great Reformation, in the days of Martin Luther, not 400 years ago, this Western Hemisphere was discovered. The Reformation awoke the nations that were fast fettered in the galling bonds of superstition to the fact that it is the heaven-born right of every man to worship God according to the dictates of his own conscience. But rulers are loath to lose their power, and religious intolerance still oppressed the people. Under these circumstances, a body of religious heroes at length determined to seek in the wilds of America that measure of civil and religious freedom which they so much desired. In pursuance of their noble purpose, 100 of these voluntary exiles landed from the Mayflower on the coast of New England December 22, 1620. "Here," says Martin, "New England was born, and this was its first baby cry, a prayer and a thanksgiving to the Lord." Another permanent English settlement was made at Jamestown, Virginia, in 1607. In process of time, other settlements were made and colonies organized, which were all subject to the English crown till the Declaration of Independence, July 4, 1776. The population of these colonies, according to the United States Magazine of August 1855, amounted in 1701 to 262,000, in 1749 to 1,046,000, in 1775 to 2,803,000, Then commenced the struggle of the American colonies for independence. In 1776, they declared themselves a free and independent nation. In 1777, delegates from the 13 original states, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia, in Congress assembled, adopted Articles of Confederation. In 1783, the War of the Revolution closed with a treaty of peace with Great Britain, whereby the independence of the United States was acknowledged, and territory ceded to the extent of 815,615 square miles. In 1787, the Constitution was framed and ratified by the foregoing 13 states, and on the 1st of March, 1789, it went into effect. Then the American ship of state was fairly launched, with less than 1 million square miles of territory and about 3 million souls. Thus, we are brought to the year 1798, when this government is introduced into prophecy. And now, passing over a little more than 100 years to the commencement of the 20th century, the territory of the United States government has expanded to 3,678,392 square miles, and its population has increased to over 93 million people. Its growth in newspapers, schools, production of the precious metals, and wealth of all kinds which pertain to a civilized people has been equally remarkable and furnishes an ample basis for the application of the prophecy. 6. Character of the government symbolized by the two-horned beast. Under this division of the subject, we find still further evidence that the symbol represents the United States government. In describing this power, John says that it had 2 horns like a lamb. The horns of a lamb indicate, first, youthfulness, and secondly, innocence and gentleness. As a power which has but recently arisen, the United States answers to the symbol admirably in respect to age, while no other power, as has already been proved, can be found to do this. And considered as an index of power and character, it can be decided what constitutes the 2 horns of the government, if it can be ascertained what is the secret of its strength and power, and what reveals its apparent character or constitutes its outward profession. The Honorable J.A. Bingham gives us the clue to the whole matter when he states that the object of those who first sought these shores was to found what the world had not seen for ages, viz., a church without a pope and a state without a king. Expressed in other words, this would be a government in which the ecclesiastical should be separate from the civil power, and civil and religious liberty reign supreme. It needs no argument to show, and even the statement is unnecessary, that this is precisely the profession of the American government. Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution of the United States reads, "The United States shall guarantee to every state in this Union a republican form of government." Article 6. No religious test shall ever be required as a qualification to any office or public trust under the United States. The First Amendment of the Constitution, Article 1, begins as follows: Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. These articles profess the amplest guarantee of civil and religious liberty, the entire and perpetual separation of church and state. And what better symbols of them could be given than 2 horns like a lamb? In what other country can be found a condition of things which would meet so completely this feature of the symbol? 7. A republican government. The 2-horned beast symbolizes a nation with a republican form of government. This is shown by the absence of crowns both upon its head and its horns. A crown is an appropriate symbol of a kingly or monarchical form of government, and the absence of crowns, as in this case, would suggest a government in which the power is not vested in any such ruling member, but is, per consequence, lodged in the hands of the people. But this is not the most conclusive proof that the nation here symbolized is republican in its form of government. From verse 14, we learn that appeal is made to the people when any national action is to be performed, saying to them that dwell on the earth that they should make an image to the beast, etc. Were the government a monarchy, national questions would hardly be submitted in this unqualified manner to the people. And the fact that appeal is here made to the people shows that the form of the government is such that the power is vested in their hands. And this is emphatically the case in the United States government, but not in any other government to which anyone could reasonably think of applying this symbol. This is another strong link in the chain of evidence that this symbol must apply to the United States of America. 8. A Protestant nation. The two-horned beast also symbolizes a government which is Protestant in religion, or which at least is a non-Catholic power. It has been shown that the preceding beast symbolized the papacy. And of the two-horned beast we read that he causeth the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast. But in all Catholic countries, the people voluntarily worship the beast, or obey the dictates of Catholicism without being caused or compelled to do so by the government. The fact that the people of this government do not render this worship till caused to do so by the civil power shows that the religion they entertain is not Catholicism. As an almost inevitable consequence, it follows that it is Protestantism, for these are the only two religions of any consequence in Christendom. The United States is a Protestant nation and meets the requirements of the prophecy admirably in this respect. Thus again, the prophecy points directly to this government. Threatening evil. 9. The dragon voice. After contemplating all the good features presented in this symbol, it is with pain we read that he spake as a dragon. Before entering upon a discussion of this topic, let us look at the points already established. It has been shown, 1. That the government symbolized by the two-horned beast must be some government distinct from the powers of the old world, whether civil or ecclesiastical. 2. That it must arise in the Western Hemisphere. 3. That it must be seen assuming a position of prominence and influence about the year 1798. 4. That it must rise in a peaceful and quiet manner, not augmenting its power, as other nations have done, by aggressive wars and successful conquests. 5. That its progress must be so rapid as to strike the beholder with as much wonder as would the perceptible growth of an animal before his eyes. 6. That it must be republican in its form of government. 7. That it must be Protestant in its religion. 8. That it must exhibit before the world as an index of its character and the elements of its government two great principles which are in themselves perfectly just, innocent, and lamb-like. 9. That it must perform its work this side of 1798. And we have seen that of these 9 specifications it can be said, first, that they are all perfectly met in the history of the United States thus far, and secondly, that they are not met in the history of any other government on the face of the earth. It is therefore impossible to apply the symbol of Revelation 13:11 to any other government but that of the United States. But after describing the lamb-like appearance of this symbol, the prophet immediately adds this, and he spake as a dragon. The dragon, the first link in this chain of prophecy, was a relentless persecutor of the Church of God. The leopard beast which follows was likewise a persecuting power, grinding out for 1,260 years the lives of millions of the followers of Christ. The third actor in the scene, the two-horned beast, speaks like the first and thus shows himself to be a dragon at heart. For out of the abundance of the heart the mouth speaketh, and in the heart actions are conceived. This, then, like the others, is to be a persecuting power, And the reason that any of them are mentioned in prophecy is simply because they are persecuting powers. And if the United States is the power intended by this symbol, which speaks as a dragon, it follows that this government is to enact unjust and oppressive laws against the religious profession and practice of some of its subjects. Nor is this so improbable an event as might at first appear. We must remember that in the last days the vast majority of the people of the most favored lands are to relapse into the low moral condition described in such scriptures as Matthew 24:12, 2 Timothy 3:1 through 5, 2 Peter 3:3 and 4, Luke 17:26 through 30, and 18:8. And it is from such that those who live godly in Christ Jesus will suffer persecution. 2 Timothy 3:12. Evil is also threatened from another quarter. Roman Catholicism, which has grown strong through immigration, has fixed its rapacious eyes on the United States, determined to bring this government under its power. Votes rule here, and Romanism controls an immense suffrage, which it carefully manipulates to its own ends. With such a weapon in its hands, its power for evil is almost unlimited. For multitudes of unscrupulous politicians who, under their country's pay, labor not for their country's good but for their own selfish aggrandizement, stand ready to help any party carry out any scheme, no matter how wicked, if that party will keep them in office. Within recent years, we have witnessed the ominous phenomenon of the consolidation of the Catholic elements in this country into one gigantic society, or federation as it is known, which holds annual conventions in our large cities and conducts an active campaign in the interests of the Catholic Church. The Federation has been careful to announce that it was not going into politics, meaning by this that it would not ally itself with any one political party, knowing of course that to form such an alliance would be to incur the opposition of other political parties. It is, however, in politics, with the idea of controlling all political parties and having the opposition of none, which is the very worst sense in which any church party can be in politics. This great federation, which now has more than 2 million members, can swing its vote and its influence solidly against any political or governmental action to which it is opposed. And as between the political parties which are contending for the mastery in this country, it easily holds the balance of power and can dictate terms to either, so that no matter how an election turns, it is sure to go in favor of the papacy. Already this organization has boasted of its power over Congress. When it seemed likely that this government would join with England in some action toward putting an end to the atrocities practiced in the so-called Congo Free State under the rule of His Catholic Majesty Leopold I of Belgium, the Federation intervened, and a feature of the Secretary's report at the next convention, held at Indianapolis, July 1907, was a lengthy statement setting forth how the Federation had taken action, refraining the United States from any act of intervention in Congo affairs. And not only does the Federation aim to control legislation, national and state, but it is conducting an active campaign for the suppression of all anti-Catholic literature in public libraries, and even from circulation in the mails. The regular attendance of the President and other high government officials at Mass in a Catholic church in Washington on Thanksgiving days, and the participation of the President and Vice President and ex-President and leading members of Congress at the Jubilee of Cardinal Gibbons, June 1911, are marked indications of the strong hold which Rome is securing upon this Protestant republic. In addition to this, we have spiritualism, infidelity, socialism, free love, and trades unions, or labor against capital and communism, all assiduously spreading their principles among the masses. These are the very principles that worked among the people as the exciting cause just prior to the terrible French Revolution of 1789 and onward. Human nature is the same in all ages. and like causes will surely produce like effects. 10. Great wonders. In that part of the prediction which sets forth the work of the two-horned beast, we read that he doeth great wonders, so that he maketh fire come down from heaven on earth in the sight of men. In this specification we have still further proof that the United States is the government represented by the two-horned beast, that we are living in an age of wonders, none deny. See on Daniel 12:4, remarks on the wonderful achievements of the present age, and double page of vignette illustrating some of the leading triumphs of scientific and inventive skill. But this prophecy is not fulfilled in the great advancement in knowledge, the discoveries and inventions so notable at the present time. For the wonders to which the prophet had reference are evidently wrought for the purpose of deceiving the people, as we read in verse 14. And deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast. This identifies the two-horned beast with the false prophet of Revelation 19:20. For this false prophet is the power that works miracles before the beast, with which he deceived them that had received the mark of the beast, and them that worshipped his image, the identical work of the two-horned beast. We can now ascertain by what means the miracles in question are wrought, for Revelation 16:13 and 14 speaks of spirits of devils working miracles, which go forth unto the kings of the earth and of the whole world, to gather them to the battle of the great day of God Almighty. And these miracle-working spirits go forth out of the mouths of certain powers, one of which is this very false prophet or two-horned beast. The Savior, predicting events to occur just before his second coming, says, "For there shall arise false Christs and false prophets, and shall show great signs and wonders, insomuch that, if it were possible, they shall deceive the very elect." Here, again, are wonders foretold, wrought for the purpose of deception, so powerful that, were it possible, even the very elect would be deceived by them. Thus, we have a prophecy, and there are many others, setting forth the development in the last days of a wonder-working power manifested to a startling and unprecedented degree in the interest of falsehood and error. The earthly government with which it was to be especially connected is that represented by the two-horned beast, or false prophet. The agency lying back of the outward manifestations was to be satanic, the spirit of devils. The prophecy calls for such a work as this in America at the present time. Do we behold anything like it? Read the answer in the lamentation of the prophet. "Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for the devil is come down unto you, having great wrath, because he knoweth that he hath but a short time. Stand aghast, O earth, tremble, ye people, but be not deceived." The huge specter of evil confronts us as the prophet declared. Satan is loosed. From the depth of Tartarus, myriads of demons swarm over the land. The prince of darkness manifests himself as never before, and throwing over his work a would-be heavenly garb, her calls it spiritualism. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, or share with anyone you think might be willing to hear these precious truths. God bless.